as we'll also give you a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co. with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is GB News. I'm Alex Armstrong. We're going live to Washington, D.C. with Bev Turner for The Late Show Live. Bev, what's coming up on your show tonight?
Good evening, Alex. It's so good to see you, and thank you all at home for joining us. We're going to be looking forward to these trade talks that Donald Trump is going to be doing with Xi Jinping of China. What is it going to mean for all of us? Tariffs is a word that, frankly, puts me to sleep. But we are going to try and make it interesting. Our American guests are very good on this, although we all also just agreed in the studio that we don't find it the most thrilling topic. But I promise you, we will find something interesting to say about tariffs. We're going to be talking about also this Rachel Reeves situation. How much trouble is she actually in for having rented out her house in Dulwich for $3.5 grand a month? I don't know what you think of it, Alex. Do you think it was just a simple mistake, or has she deliberately done something here that she thought she was going to save a few quid?
I think it's just very exposing, isn't it, that the Chancellor should be over these kinds of details. And we've obviously seen her background, not a very experienced business person. I think actually it's quite telling about Labour's position in government and their lack of experience across the board. But what I'd be really interested to hear, Bev, is what Americans' reaction are to all this stuff on what they would probably think, I would say, is silly British problems, because I think in America they've got far bigger things that would get them sort of having to apologise for rather than this. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is interesting because that is already what we've been discussing here in the studios before we came on air. We're going to be covering all of that in The Late Show Live. On The Late Show Live tonight. Dear oh dear, tax queen Rachel Reeves is embroiled in another scandal this evening. Reports claim that she broke housing laws. Also tonight.
Migration, immigration, migration, 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 migration.
So why shouldn't Britain? Is it time to pay illegal Channel migrants to self-deport instead of paying to keep them in hotels? I know that's controversial. Let me know your thoughts. Also breaking tonight.
Horrible, horrific, terrifying, the worst day of my entire life, the worst experience of my entire life. And we are literally desperate for some help at this point.
Caribbean carnage. Hurricane Melissa continues to tear through the Caribbean. It's leaving behind a trail of destruction and a soaring death toll. We're going to also be looking at the stories in tomorrow's newspapers, hours before they hit the shelves. Of course, we are live in Washington, D.C., just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories that America is talking about and that matter to Britain too, including this.
I just wanted to thank you. You rolled out a red carpet that was a very good red carpet, a beautiful red carpet.
Don's deal. The president is tonight preparing for a high-stakes sit-down with China's Xi Jinping, their first meeting in 6 years. But should the West be cozying up to Beijing, or is it time to push back? Plus.
Hey, do you like my Cybertruck? Come on, y'all. Yeehaw!
Sometimes there are no words. I will bring you the latest from what Prince Harry has been up to during his time here in America. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live, and our night is just getting started. So it's broken this evening, of course, hasn't it? This idea that it might be time to pay illegal Channel migrants to self-deport. Now, back in May, President Trump's government rolled out its voluntary return scheme. $1,000 in cash plus a free ticket home for those who came to America illegally. It's not a bribe, it's psychology. Deportations cost $17,000 each. Self-deportation costs a fraction of that. And it's working. Illegal crossings are down, arrests are down, and people are taking the deal. But we, in the UK, we've been running assisted returns for nearly 20 years, up to £3,000 plus flights, but hardly anyone knows about it. Why? Because we keep it hidden, like it's something to be ashamed of. And I know it is infuriating. But surely it is better than spending billions on housing migrants in hotels. I don't think that when a child sex offender like Harish Kebatu is mistakenly released, he should get a £500 bonus to get on the plane. But it worked, and he's gone. And here in America, cash for exit is policy. In Britain, we make panic payoffs only when the system has failed. Here's the uncomfortable truth. It costs far more to keep migrants here in the UK than it does to send them home with a bit of cash in their pocket. And I know this shouldn't be there at all, but we have to swallow the bitter pill now, or Britain will be forever paying hotel bills. Just listen to what President Trump had to say about Britain on this.
They're putting people in luxury hotels, and other people that are working their asses off are living, from hand to mouth. They're not living the same way. I mean, I looked at some of the hotels they're using, and they've done it in our country also. They put them in like the best hotels anywhere in the world. And it's no good.
The scheme here in the UK is so narrow that it barely scratches the surface. It only covers asylum seekers who've been refused leave to remain, victims of trafficking, care leavers and rough sleepers. The UK scheme only covers asylum seekers who've been refused, victims of trafficking, care leavers and rough sleepers. But the obvious group, the dinghy migrants, arriving illegally every single day. They are not included. Why? Well, America first means paying illegal migrants to leave. Britain last means paying them to stay. Britain, surely one-way tickets are cheaper than one-way decline. Let's get the take of the leader of Reform UK in the London Assembly, Alex Wilson. Alex, good evening. There's a lot to get our heads around here because the systems are similar but also different. But the principle itself as to whether people should be incentivised with a back pocket, with a bit of cash in it to go away, is it good or bad?
Good evening, Bev. It's great to be with you this evening. You've made quite a powerful case there for a scheme under which you could pay people voluntarily to leave. If it's working in America, you argue why couldn't it work here? And yes, you're right to highlight the staggering cost of accommodation in hotels, in HMOs and perhaps in military bases if the government's now looking to do that instead. All of that is a huge cost. And yes, the cost of a one-way ticket to wherever these people should be going back to is less than that, and there's an argument for doing that. But what there isn't an argument for doing in the case of, as we've seen today, which is the case that has kind of triggered the media interest in this, Hadesh Kabatu bunged £500 to leave the country because he threatened to kick up a fuss, he threatened to claim asylum, to disrupt the flight, and all those kind of things as a way. So this money was paid as a way of basically silencing him, and really it's a kick in the teeth of the taxpayer. All of this is a kick in the teeth for the taxpayer who has to pick up the bill one way or the other. And we have to ask ourselves, actually, why is any of this necessary in the first place? If people have entered the country illegally, we should be able to deport them, remove them, without them threatening to cause any further disruption. We should be able to just get on with it and get them out. But we can't do that because we've signed up to these international obligations, the ECHR, Refugee Convention, and also because of our own rank stupidity as a country. We fund these legal challenges that these people will challenge against our own government. It's insane. That's why we have to have this as an option. But fundamentally, what we need to do is stop the boats in the first place and get people out when they're here and they shouldn't be here.
Yeah, Alex, let me bring in my panel as well here to get an American perspective on this. We've got Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK, very familiar face to GB News, and Rebecca Zelko, DC reporter for Blaze News, who is becoming a more familiar face to GB News. Greg, you know both sides of this story very well. Why does it work here in America? Because some of these amounts that these migrants are being given, they're small amounts, like 500 quid. Yes, it's a lot of money in the UK, but actually to get rid of the bloke, we'd spend tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands putting him in prison. It's a small amount to pay, isn't it? And here in the UK, it is working. In the US, sorry.
Yeah, it is working, and I think that you have to have the will to do it, and I don't think the Labour government wants the migrants to leave, right? And I think the Tories before them, maybe they didn't want the migrants to accumulate, but they sure didn't do much about keeping the boats from arriving. And so look, I think you have to have the will. It was only a year ago that we were waving in, 2 million illegal migrants a year, and there was no effort by the Democrats, by the Biden administration, to deport any, unlike the Obama administration, Barack Obama was happy to deport as many illegal migrants as possible, and so is Trump. So where there's a will, there's a way. I don't think there's a will in the UK right now.
Yeah, Rebecca, that's such a good point, that as soon as an administration came into America that wanted to fix the problem, they could fix the problem. They weren't just handing out a few $100s here and there. They actually just completely solved this issue, haven't they? How do you feel about the principle, though, of paying migrants, illegal migrants, to go home?
I mean, yeah, as you pointed out, the difference was totally night and day, but as far as, and really all it took was a new president, but as far as actually the incentive structure, I don't necessarily disagree, because at the end of the day, if there's going to be a cheaper, more effective way to deport people who weren't supposed to be here to begin with, I'm kind of in favor of that. If there's always going to be some sort of resources required to actually address the problem, and if there is a simple, efficient, and voluntary way for that to happen, we've seen now, I think it's been about 2 million migrants who came to this country illegally self-deport. I'm pretty much in favor of that. And if it actually helps cut off the cost, sort of nip it in the bud, as we say, then I'm in favor of something like that, since it'll save us so much more in the long run.
Alex, it's a very difficult issue, though, for some reason, for the British public, and I get it. When I say for some reason, I think it's really obvious why we don't want our taxpayers' money just to pay them. It just feels so wrong. It just feels so unfair that we're, in a sense, rewarding illegal behaviour. But if it works, do we just have to get on with it and just do it?
Government simply doesn't want to do, and the previous Conservative government wasn't able to do. But yeah, the taxpayer will feel ripped off either way. So fundamentally what we need to do is have a new government that will have the balls and the courage to say this is something we must get on top of. We must tackle this problem. We must leave those international obligations that are preventing us from doing so, and we must stop funding directly through UK taxpayers the legal challenge against these deportations. We need to have that courage and leadership to get this situation sorted, and people are really frustrated. I mean, the Bell Hotel in Epping, which is where this person was staying when they committed that heinous sexual offence. It's not far from where I live, a couple of tube stations up the line. So I'm well aware of all the issues that are going on there, and the real sense of frustration from the local community there. They're looking to their local politicians and their national politicians to take some action on this and get it fixed. And they're not getting it from either of them at the moment, which is why people are so annoyed.
And why do you think it is that we don't know more, Alex, about the fact that we are already paying certain migrants to go home? Like, it is a bit of a dirty secret. Why is that?
I think because people will be all the more frustrated to hear that their money is being spent to send people home when they should be being sent home anyway. We shouldn't need to bung people to leave the country if they've got no right to be here in the first place. It's a question of enforcement, and that's what's been sadly lacking. Border Force, Home Office, simply not fit for purpose. They haven't been for years. Even the Home Secretary herself admits that, and that's why we're in this problem. But it's something that's been allowed to accumulate over years of both Conservative and Labour governments. Fundamentally, we need real change, we need reform to make this happen.
We've just seen Nigel Farage, we'll show the footage to our audience a little bit later, winning Politician of the Year at the Spectator Awards tonight, and saying that he will win the next election. Would he back the policy like this, do you think, Nigel? How would he solve illegal migration?
I don't think this would be a question. If Nigel was in Downing Street and we had a new Department of Border Security that was tasked with actually removing people who don't have a right to be here, we wouldn't need to be asking questions about whether to give them an extra cash bung to leave. But there's a long way to go between now and the next election. We're very confident. We're building the party to get ourselves in the best possible state to fight those elections and hopefully win that election. But there's a long way to go, and the sad thing about there being a long way to go time-wise is that things in this country will probably get an awful lot worse, and we'll see Rachel Reeves' budget in a couple of weeks' time. The economy is in free fall. It's going to get an awful lot worse for the country before we have that opportunity to turn it around. But turn it around is exactly what we're planning to do, what we're building the party to do. If we win that election, there will be real change, there will be real reform and real hope for the future.
OK, all right, lovely to see you, Alex. Thank you so much. Leader of Reform UK at the London Assembly, Alex Wilson there. My panel will be staying with me for the rest of the evening. And I'm particularly interested, Rebecca, in your take as an American on some of the stories I know you're American too, Greg, but you're like an honorary Brit, aren't you? Because we spend a lot of time with you in London. But I do love it when our American guests, and some of the things we talk about here, the Americans just sit there with their heads in their hands going, I don't know how you're all surviving over there. Let us know how you are surviving. gbnews.com/your say. Still to come tonight, though, on The Late Show Live. Forget the economic woes tonight. It is the law that's catching up with the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. She's been accused of breaking the rules that she's meant to uphold. Is her job now on the line? Let me know, but first. Extraordinary pictures of the fiercest storm in 200 years which has hit Jamaica. It's left homes flattened, power knocked out, lives torn apart. But just how far will Hurricane Melissa's fury reach? Stay tuned to find out. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It is a very serious storm and many people will be concerned about friends and family in Jamaica and in the region.
So that was Yvette Cooper there, of course, but breaking tonight, Hurricane Melissa is tearing through the Caribbean, still leaving devastation in its wake. In Haiti, around 20 people have been confirmed dead after catastrophic flooding, with 4 more lives lost in Jamaica. Winds have topped 185 miles an hour, making it the strongest Atlantic hurricane in modern history. Let's talk now to meteorologist Jeff Cornish, who joins us. Jeff, this is an awful situation, just horrific. We were talking yesterday about Jamaica and was going to get the brunt of this storm. Then it was going to make its way to Cuba, but it seems like Haiti came within the path. Did we expect that? What happened there?
Well, we do continue to see very heavy rain in Haiti, and we have expected Haiti to continue to see very heavy rain out of this storm. Here is our forecast map, which we really haven't changed a whole lot in the past several days. You'll notice that while the landfall was in southwestern Jamaica, Haiti is not that far off to the east. And part of the problem here, even now that the storm has moved over the east central part of the Bahamas, is that within the storm's anatomy, you have this counterclockwise flow, and there's this inflow of moisture coming in from the south, and that continues to produce very heavy rain in Haiti. Haiti is an area where 98% of the naturally occurring forest there has been deforested. And also in Haiti, you have mountains up to 8,700 feet. So way up there, large mountains. And that increases and enhances rainfall in a very severe way.
Is this hurricane, Jeff, behaving in a way that it was expected to from the last couple of days?
In general, we are believing that it did align with our forecast very well. We forecast this to make landfall as a Category 5 hurricane, and unfortunately, it did achieve its highest end potential. There was a time about a week ago when it may have appeared that the storm may come in a little farther east. It did drift a little farther west and then came into, instead of southern or south central or southeastern Jamaica, the point of landfall was actually in southwestern Jamaica, which actually there's been very little good news out of Jamaica lately. But if anything, that spared Kingston, the largest city with over 600,000 people in a metro area of 1.2 million. It did spare Kingston the worst of the impacts. Things are far worse about, well, out in the western end of the island there. Some of these areas, like the community of Black River, have been largely devastated by this storm, a little more than 100 kilometers west of Kingston.
And when will it sort of burn itself out, Jeff? Like, when will it run out of its power? How many days' time do you think?
It'll take about 2 days for that to begin to happen, 2 to 3 days from now. The storm is going to be absorbed by a large trough of low pressure off the east coast of North America. So this storm is going to change character, and it'll become kind of a cold, angry North Atlantic low. And I know you in the British Isles are very accustomed to storms like these. So the character of the storm begins to change. Instead of having a warm center, they begin to take on a colder center. Fronts are attached to them and so forth. And that will begin to happen over the next couple of days. You can see that our forecast is just for it to actually for it to re-strengthen to a Category 2 hurricane, blitz through the area of Bermuda tomorrow night. And as time progresses and as those winds from the southwest begin to absorb this storm and accelerate it northward, it will very swiftly move over across the North Atlantic. And it won't be too far from you on Monday night into Tuesday morning, about 5 days from now. It will not have the same tenacity, though, that it has had into Jamaica. So there could be some wind and rain, especially north up into areas well to the north of England proper.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Jeff. So interesting. Jeff Cornish there, a meteorologist. Let me talk to my panel about this as well. I don't know where you grew up, Rebecca, but we talk about the weather a lot in the UK, and I am always amazed by the conditions that you can endure here in America, because you make us look like amateurs, frankly, when it comes to our storms and our hurricanes. But where did you grow up, and is this kind of normal behaviour for you?
Well, so I'm from California, so I could not be more spoiled when it comes to the weather. That was honestly one of the toughest transitions when I moved to the East Coast, and so I couldn't even imagine coming from the UK, where this is sort of your regular. It's just this some pretty tumultuous weather. But in California, really the worst that you would see is like maybe an earthquake here and there. Maybe we had a tsunami, a little minor tsunami that came over from Japan. But other than that, it's pretty much paradise on the weather front.
Yeah, very much. Not necessarily on the political front.
That's another discussion.
That's a whole other discussion. But the weather front is pretty lovely. And you, Greg?
Yeah, I grew up in Long Island, New York, so we were hurricane prone. Now, my childhood home was 70 feet above sea level, so we were protected, but the boats would be destroyed, and everything else down at the beach would be destroyed. So, I kind of grew up that way. It's one of the privileges of living in the United Kingdom. You don't have to worry about, hurricane risk. So, but it's a big challenge on the East Coast, and no one's really spared. I mean, from all the way down in Florida, all the way up to Massachusetts, maybe even into Maine.
I genuinely think it's a topic that is neglected, in fact, when we talk about why we are such an attractive country to migrants, the UK. I think our climate plays a big part of it because it is such a temperate climate. It is such a safe climate. We don't have these extremes. Why would anybody not want to live in the UK, frankly? When you're coming from countries like this, we're looking at some of the pictures here, the devastation in Haiti. I mean, the houses also are incredibly ramshackle. They're sort of thrown together with tin roofs, aren't they? They've not got the building structure. And it really matters at a time like this. We're looking at people walking through pavements just covered in mud. It's just mud everywhere. I mean, it's devastating for these families and for these people. They'll be calling out to Donald Trump any minute now, Greg, to ask for help. And this country, America, is very good at reaching out and helping in times of crisis.
Yeah, we're very generous. And look, those islands are really storm prone. And then Haiti also gets hit by earthquakes. I mean, it's really devastating to watch. But to Rebecca's point, it's only in London, the Americans that I meet, it's only the ones from California who hate the weather in London. Everywhere else, it's just fine.
It's true.
Yeah. Right. Thank you so much, guys. Get in touch with me this evening, won't you? gbnews.com/your say. Steve has said, I think we should put a load of mines in the sea on the French border. That'll stop people coming over. And Starkey said, I don't agree with you, Bev. Why should we reward illegal migrants? I agree it would be cheaper, but isn't there a principle at stake? Yeah, there is, but you almost think we've gone beyond principles now. The situation is so diabolical in the UK. Just Chilling saying, Bev, they need a deterrent, not an encouragement, and they don't want to stop them. They don't want to stop them 2 weeks, fortnight. They're saying that they would be there. And Chris says, no, I can't read that one out. And Sharon says, we need Trump in the UK. Labour and the Conservatives have ruined our country. Stop giving human rights lawyers our hard-earned money to pay for illegal migrant criminals. Keep your messages coming. Still to come tonight on The Late Show Live.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor who writes Britain's tax rules, has been accused of breaking the law over her own property. More on that shortly. Also tonight. President Trump has been treated like a king in South Korea today. He was even gifted a golden crown. But will he receive the same reception in China tomorrow? We're going to talk about that. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I am Bev Turner. This is, of course, GB News. Let's go through some of the stories making the front of the newspapers with GB News contributor and comedian Steve N. Allen in our London studio. Steve, good to see you. So, hot off the press, the Daily Telegraph front page. Let's have a look at this. So, Rachel Reeves eyeing 2p income tax rise. Now, most of us would think, I don't mind paying an extra 2p in income tax. I'm all right with 2p, but that's not really what it means, is it? Because these headlines are deceptive sometimes.
Yes, it's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, so previously on this, we were promised in the manifesto no increase on tax on working people, but it was the same manifesto that didn't mention digital ID, so we're all glad we spent time reading that. And so now she'd be the first Chancellor to increase the basic rate of income tax since the 1970s. And for a party that spends all of its time saying those with the broadest shoulders should carry the biggest burden, basic rate of income tax is an odd one to go for, but it's an absolute faff. You're right, there's lots of maths in this. The 2p increase on income tax, 2p off national insurance, but the employee side, not the employer side, that's already been increased, which didn't help the economy. It just goes to show how complicated the tax system is. Because I think if a few hours ago you said to someone, if you increased income tax and then decreased national insurance, would you pay more or less? You have to sit down with a pen and paper to try and work out what it's such an absolute mess, isn't it? So that's the situation we're in now. This could raise $6 billion, though, if you want to do someone else to do the maths for you. In theory, this could raise $6 billion.
But I do wonder whether it would, Steve, because, of course, we're seeing the flight of the wealthy out of the UK for the very reason that as soon as you increase income tax, those who pay the most just book a flight and off they go. In fact, I've probably got one sat beside me at the moment. Let's bring our panel in. Greg Swenson is here, Rebecca Zelko as well. And Greg does understand this in the minutiae detail, don't you, Greg, in terms of what this means for taxpayers. Just explain it. When she talks about 2p, what does that really mean? What is it going to mean for people?
First of all, it means they're going to tax more, and they always will. So they're always going to start with something that sounds palatable and then raise it later. This will raise some more, maybe more revenue. And I know, $6 billion might be the number that they use as a, a base case, right? Because they just do the simple math. How many people pay tax, and we're going to get X amount versus last year. But that's not what happens. Tax receipts have gone down since they managed to ensure that 15,000 expats that were paying a lot of tax left the country. And so typically with tax increases, revenues either go down or they don't go up as much as they promise, and then the deficit just widens. So this is classic left-leaning politics where they're taxing work. If you want to tax cigarettes, to get less smoking and you want to tax alcohol to have less drinking, well, that's fine. But if you tax work, you're going to get less work.
And Steve, I think what you said there about the manifesto is just so interesting, because I didn't realise they were going to be quite so socialist, capital S socialist. That is not who Starmer and Reeves appeared to be when they were on the campaign trail. And I think a lot of people are feeling absolutely helpless and absolutely furious and deceived right now.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, what's the point of manifestos? If they're not going to be stuck to, if they're just going to find ways around them, then it turns out they're empty promises. And then that does the reputation of all politicians not a lot of help, doesn't it? But yeah, when you look at this, they were saying they wanted to try and tax the wealthy. It was a couple of weeks ago, that was the headline. And then you just need to define what wealthy means. And I think one definition of wealthy is those who are wealthy enough to be able to move away when taxation gets increased. It's a fool's errand, isn't it? You've got to try and tax the people who can move them their assets around. So it's not going to work. One thing you should do is probably try and cut spending, but they tried that, and there was the rebellion, and that's where we find ourselves now.
Yeah, the breaking news on this story tonight actually is that the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has said that the Chancellor should get the axe if she raises tax. I do wonder how many people it took to think up that line, because it's obviously a little bit sort of pithy and memorable, Rebecca. But this idea that if you have won an election on certain promises that you then repeatedly break, or you do not keep the promises that you made, should there be a way of getting rid of you before the next election?
I mean, here in the United States, the phrase promises made and promises kept became really popular in the last election because we elected Donald Trump to be this change agent, the change being actually adhering to the policies that you promised to your voters that you would be delivering. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see such a huge backlash when you have such a severe deviation from the original policies that you pitched your voters. And I think of Zoran Mamdani in New York, if I'm being honest, when you're thinking about increasing taxes, whether it be on income tax, property tax, for whatever socialist policies that you're interested in implementing. I mean, it's going to be a natural reaction for people to flee the state. It happened in California, where I'm from, and people flee to Florida or Texas or Tennessee, where the cost of living is just so much more affordable, and then they vote for the exact same policies that made it so expensive to leave in the first place. It's like this never-ending cycle. And so I'm interested to see what the reaction is long term, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of backlash.
Yeah. Looking at the front page of the Express, Steve, if we move on, which is the story that a lot of people have been talking about in the UK today, and it will be also tomorrow. This is this sex attacker migrant. Basically, he was accidentally released. He should have been being deported. They found him again. And anyway, now they've paid him 500 quid to leave Britain. This story would not make the headlines here in the US. Why? Because they would consider £500 a small price to pay to get rid of such a criminal. And yet it makes the front page in the Express. It really pulls into focus, I think, the difference between the US and the UK and their perception of how you get rid of illegal migrants, Steve.
Yeah, there's the math side of it, and I think you could make that argument, and I've been enjoying the debate, I've been listening to it. Of course, if it's cheaper to pay some money to get people to self-deport, then mathematically it makes sense. But then you've got to talk about the vibes, the feel. It feels bad, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. And I think in general it would leave a bad taste in the mouth, but this is specifically the case where you don't want to be giving extra money, because this is not just someone who's a criminal because they illegally entered the country. This is someone found guilty of a terrible, hideous crime. But also this entire story speaks to how safe do we feel, because this lets us know that we can't be kept safe by certainly not border security, not by policing on the street level of security, not by keeping people in prison without accidentally releasing them, not by capturing them, because he wasn't captured. He was found by members of the public who recognised him, and he tried to hand himself in 3 times and no one actually listened to him. None of this makes it's such a farce. The system isn't working, and then just as the cherry, the icing on top of the cake at the end is he wanted to leave, he wanted to be deported, and he realised, if I say I might kick off, I'll get an extra 500 quid. That's why it sits so badly with us.
Yeah, I do. I agree with you. It does sit badly. But Greg, I can't help but think the mindset in this country would be give him his 500 quid and see the back of him. Why is it different?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he had committed another crime besides illegally entering the country. I don't think that would sit very well with the taxpayers here. But I do think the simple math that you mentioned at the beginning of the show, $1,000 for a voluntary deportation or self-deportation versus $17,000 to spend on a deportation by ICE and going through all kinds of hoops. And I think that's what we have to message better in the UK, is that this, not in this particular case, but generally speaking, the incentive for self-deportation is better for the taxpayer. That has to be communicated better.
This story, Rebecca, the image I can't get out of my head is that conversation which must have happened between this guy's lawyers and the state, where the lawyer basically acts as his agent and says, well, you know what, he won't go for 200 quid, he won't go for 300 quid, but if you round it up to 500 quid, he might get on the plane. That's the bit that makes me feel deeply icky about it. It's a negotiation.
Yeah, when I was younger, my dad taught me that nothing in this world is free, and that seriously seems to be the case in this situation. But I think it is important, as Greg mentioned, to really message this properly. There might be some flaws with the incentive structure there, but of course, any sort of deportation, any sort of immigration effort is going to cost the taxpayer something. And so it's kind of, you have to sort of do a cost-benefit analysis there. Is it more worth it for you to keep this person in the country, or to provide maybe a flawed incentive structure, but one that is ultimately less expensive and actually produces a safer result for your citizens? You have to kind of choose between the lesser of two evils in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I also feel like I should have apologised before we showed that front cover of the Daily Express, in case you're a viewer of the show in the UK, Traitors, Steve. I'm not. Are you, Greg Swenson? Are you?
Sorry, no. Just heard about it tonight.
No, and Rebecca isn't either. Steve, I don't know, you don't strike me as the kind of guy that sits around watching aged and reality TV stars getting kicked out, but this is, on a more serious point, I think the Express, with a picture of the person who got kicked out, I'm not going to name him because I think it is unfair on the viewers. There were lots of people in this studio who wanted to go and watch that on catch up, and now are really cross with the Express to do this. It's quite unusual for a paper to give away a spoiler like that.
It is, but also anyone who's that upset by it could probably grow up. You're right, I don't watch stuff like that. If your life is filled with watching reality TV, it's on you, isn't it? Watch it quickly before you look at the front pages, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I've not. Have you seen it, Steve?
I've not seen I've seen half an episode of the non-celebrity one. I hate the fact that when TV shows get good, they then make a celebrity version. They've got enough money. Let the non-celebs out of this world manage to make a bit of dosh.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Steve, we'll talk to you a little bit later. Thank you so much. We'll be going through some more of the stories on the front pages and inside tomorrow's newspapers with Steve in just a little while. But still to come tonight on The Late Show Live. Reeves might be having another bad evening tonight. The Chancellor is accused of breaking the rules, some pretty basic rules about renting out her house. Does that mean her job should be on the line? First of all, though, tonight.
We had a tremendous meeting today with South Korea. I think the meeting a lot was determined, very much determined. And we made our deal. We've pretty much finalized a trade deal.
Another done deal. President Trump strikes a deal with South Korea hours before tomorrow's meeting with China's Xi Jinping. But is the West getting too cozy with Beijing? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
'Cause the failure is-
you're
the failure is-
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Pretty much agreed that I'll be going to China. When is that? In the earlier part of the year. Okay. And President Xi will be coming into maybe Washington or Palm Beach or someplace.
So President Trump says he believes the US is going to have a deal with China, and not just any deal, a deal that is good for both. All eyes tomorrow will be on his meeting with China's President Xi, as the two leaders have been locked in a war over tariffs. But there's another layer tonight. China has ominously warned the UK of consequences over a row about its mega embassy in London. Now, this is a building so secretive that the basement plans were literally greyed out for the public. Now, this raises the big question: should the West get closer to China, cut a deal and cash the cheque, or do we treat them as the threat that they keep proving to be? Let's get the view of Austin Williams, China commentator and author of China's Urban Revolution. Good evening, Austin. Thank you very much for joining me. So let's keep it simple. China, good or bad, friend or foe?
Well, if you've been listening to the news for the last 2 weeks, I don't even know if the government recognises whether it's an enemy, a threat, or somebody to do business with. I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because obviously China is the second biggest economy in the world. It's kind of, as you can see from the Trump-Xi meeting now, that they're actually getting together and they're on a par in many respects. You know, they are battling for world influence on a number of fronts. So to ignore these people, to ignore China, to ignore the money that they might bring in would be foolish. But I mean, to be frank with you, I've thought about this long and hard, and I don't really know what I would do if I was Starmer. The fact that he's put off the planning decision for the embassy until December the 10th is just kicking the can down the road. He's going to have to make a decision at some point. But all I would say is that obviously, like I say, given the last couple of weeks, we see that Chinese spying is very much in the cold light of day. They're doing it on the street. They don't need a basement necessarily to hide away from. They're very confident in being able to spy in the UK. But then again... No, go on. Sorry.
This embassy, Austin, this super embassy proposal was first brought about in 2018, and of course, I for one, I'm deeply disturbed by the idea that China would have such a significant footprint in London with no details of the building necessarily. The plans hit this roadblock, didn't they? Tower Hamlets refused planning permission in December 2022. I think we have to come to a decision about how we feel about how much we're allowing China into the UK. There is not a business in the world that sets up in any country that does not have the fingerprints, let's say, or the knowledge of the Chinese government behind it. These businesses don't act in isolation, do they? The government is across everything that happens commercially out of China. So are we naive in Britain to ignore that?
Well, look, I mean, there's two things. One is that obviously Britain is trying to get an embassy built in Beijing at the moment. And so it's a quid pro quo. And China is basically holding this embassy in London as a threat to say, if you don't allow us to do this, then we won't let you have your refurbishment and your new embassy in Beijing. So, there's a diplomatic question to be done. Then there's the specifics about this embassy being built over certain Whitehall communication lines, which just for me symbolizes the fact it was an idiotic part on the British side to sell this land, rather than, the Chinese obviously would have bought it because it's good for them. But I agree with you that, spying and espionage and all the rest of it carries on and has been going on for hundreds of years. Whether China does it better than the rest, I don't really know. To your remark about state ownership in some respect, that there's no such thing as a private company. They have to reveal their data if the Chinese state demands it. That's because the Chinese state will demand it. It's an authoritarian one-party state. What I find surprising is that organizations, companies like Meta, voluntarily will hand over their information to the state. They will block President Trump, if you remember, from actually being able to broadcast on their servers. So, do you know what I mean? There's what you get. You know what you're going to get with China, right? That's what it is. It's a one-party authoritarian regime, and does what it says on the tin. I think the West, we have to realize that we are learning some very bad lessons from China and implementing them over here. Whether it's pragmatism, whether it's authoritarianism, censorship, monitoring, all these things are from the Chinese playbook.
Yeah, very true. Let's bring in Greg and Rebecca on this as well then. Rebecca, tariffs is going to be a big issue between Trump and President Xi. Where does it go, do you think? You like tariffs, Rebecca. You like the topic of tariffs. I think you're the only person I've ever met who does. Everyone else finds them really boring.
I mean, I don't necessarily blame people. It's not the most fascinating thing. It's just a little bit convoluted. And so the way that I think of tariffs, at least one aspect I think about when I think about tariffs, is that Trump really sees them as a negotiating tool. It's not necessarily difficult to get smaller countries in line or in a position where they're negotiating trade more advantageously with the United States. And I mean, you saw during Trump's trip in Asia, I mean, he's really enjoying all the fanfare. In Malaysia, he's doing his signature YMCA dance and all these things. But his favorite meetings really are the toughest ones, the ones with President Xi or the ones with President Putin, or he was hoping to have a meeting with Kim Jong-un from North Korea. And so I think these are the ones that he really looks forward to, because this is where a lot of the nitty-gritty gets done. And so it's one to watch for sure. I think he is really hoping to cut a deal, but we'll have to wait and see if that actually happens.
Yeah, Greg, I think that is so true, isn't it? He likes the challenge of these meetings, these high-profile ones. He won't want to come out with anything that doesn't look like a victory.
And I think he's done a great job so far with using tariffs, as a negotiating tool, as Rebecca said, but also as a revenue producer. That's worked already. We're seeing deficit reduction and billions of dollars coming in. And then, of course, there's that effort to rebuild the industrial base in America and become more or less dependent on Chinese imports specifically. So, look, I think he's winning on all those fronts. He had to blow up the relationship with China and rebuild it in his own way, and I think he's doing a great job, and I'm very confident about tomorrow.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Austin Williams there joining us, the author of China's Urban Revolution as well. Thanks, Austin. Right, keep your thoughts coming this evening. gbnews.com/your say. More to come in the next hour, including this.
I fought for law, and the law won. I fought for law, and
This is Rachel Reeves' rent scandal, of course. She is in some trouble, but we have heard this evening what the Prime Minister has responded, what the Prime Minister said in response to this. Don't go anywhere.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start for many of us today. A few mist patches around a chilly start, but plenty of sunshine. It is then going to turn increasingly cloudy from the west, with outbreaks of rain and strengthening winds later. Already turning cloudy for parts of Wales, the southwest and Northern Ireland. And then we've got this rain moving in late morning for Northern Ireland, pushing then into western Scotland, parts of Wales as well as the winds strengthen. But it stays bright in the east, and as it turns cloudy, it will stay rather chilly, 10 to 12 Celsius, but temperatures up to 15 in the south. And we do have the wind strength, and that's going to make it feel on the cool side, with the strongest winds expected across western Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, 60 to 70 mile-per-hour wind gusts in exposed spots. That combined with some wet weather as we go into the evening for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, as well as increasingly parts of Wales and the southwest, it's going to make for some tricky conditions if you're out and about. Further east, though, we keep the clear spells, albeit with increasingly thick layers of cloud moving in. And then this active band of rain moves west to east, predominantly during the evening across western parts, slowing down and becoming a little more fragmented as it clears eastern areas during the early hours, pushing into Orkney and Shetland by dawn on Friday. Replaced by clear spells, blustery winds, so that will keep the temperatures at 8 to 13 Celsius typically, but also some frequent showers moving in. Initially, the showers will be across western and southern parts of the UK, but showers could develop just about anywhere on Friday, and there'll be some really quite lively downpours, thunder and lightning, hail, and very gusty winds around some of the livelier showers, particularly for central and southern parts of the UK. In between, some sunny spells, but it's going to remain blustery through the day. A little bit warmer, however, 17 Celsius in the south.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Rachel Reeves, the rule breaker, deliberate or incompetence, and frankly, which is worse? This is The Late Show Live. I'm Bev Turner. Tonight on The Late Show Live. She might be crying tonight. Tax queen Rachel Reeves is embroiled in another scandal this evening. Reports are claiming that she broke housing laws. Also tonight.
Migration, immigration, migration, 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 migration.
President Trump does it, so why shouldn't we? Is it time to pay illegal channel migrants to self-deport instead of paying to keep them in hotels? What would that mean? Would it just act as an incentive? Also breaking tonight.
Horrible, horrific, terrifying, the worst day of my entire life, the worst experience of my entire life. And we are literally desperate for some help at this point.
Carnage in the Caribbean. Hurricane Melissa continues to tear through Caribbean islands, leaving behind a trail of destruction and a soaring death toll. We're going to be diving headfirst into the stories, of course, from tomorrow's newspapers before they hit the shelves. We are live in Washington, D.C., just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories that America is talking about and that matter to Britain too, including this.
I just wanted to thank you. You rolled out a red carpet that was a very good red carpet, a beautiful red carpet.
Big Don's deal. The president is tonight preparing for a high-stakes sit-down with China's President Xi, their first meeting in 6 years. But should the West be cozying up to Beijing, or is it time to just push back? Plus.
Hey, do you like my Cybertruck? Come on, y'all. Yeehaw!
That is Prince Harry making an idiot of himself again in the United States. I'm Bev Turner, this is The Late Show Live, and welcome to the second hour. The pace gets faster, the brakes have been dropped. Don't go anywhere. I want to hear from you, of course, as well. gbnews.com/your say, and Rebecca and Greg will remain with me in the studio. But breaking tonight, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, has been caught apparently breaking the law because she misunderstood a basic financial procedure. She apparently rented out her £3,200 a month Dulwich home without the proper licence. So Southwark Council says that is illegal. Rachel Reeves says she just didn't know. I am not sure ignorance would be much of an excuse if you or I didn't pay our HMRC tax bill. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know I had to. We wouldn't get very far, would we? Personally, I suspect this is an honest mistake. I doubt that she risked her career to save the £900 fee to buy the licence. But isn't that almost worse? What does it tell us about her eye for detail, her competence, and frankly her intelligence that she didn't check? What does it tell us about Labour that nobody advises senior MPs to literally get their house in order when they move into government? This woman is about to hammer us with a brutal £40 billion tax raid. Does she even know why she's doing it. She swore that last year's plundering was a one-off, but economists are now getting a sense of déjà vu, anticipating another record raid coming next month. Sir Keir Starmer, her boss, of course, promised a total crackdown on cronyism. He said politics is not a hobby, it is not a game, he said.
I'm absolutely determined to restore honesty and integrity to government, because I think that is core to ensuring that people appreciate that politics can be a force for good.
So what will he now do to his vital teammate? Well, tonight it seems that Rachel Reeves isn't just Britain's Chancellor. She's a dodgy landlord who also decides what happens to your salary. And that, my friends, is terrifying. Let's get the take of political commentator Lee Harris now. Lee, good evening. Thank you for joining us. So, was it just a mistake? And if so, isn't that worse than something she did deliberately?
Well, it's just yet another scandal in a long line of scandals from a party, who, as you just pointed out, ran an election on being the party of competence and cleaning up politics. This isn't just a normal minister. This is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who has also, by the way, threatened tax hikes on family homes, imposed new laws on landlords. And she's, failed to follow the law herself by illegally renting out her house. Some might say this is a mistake. It's true probably to say this isn't the crime of the century. I think the licence is about 800 or 900 quid, something like that, to get it done. And apparently it isn't in every single area. So depending on where you live, depends on whether you actually get the licence. But, this does give an insight into her character. If she can't get the small things right, she's clearly not over the detail, but she can't get the small things right. How do we expect her to run one of the biggest economies in the world? But this also follows, let's not forget, I can't believe it's been so many things, but this also follows, Rayner resigning after avoiding paying stamp duty. I think it was literally only 24 hours ago. We've had Lucy Powell, who's on a list of other ministers, other Labour MPs, who have been renting out their flats to other MPs, and the MP renting out has been claiming it back on expenses. I mean, considering what's happening in this country and a cost of living crisis, and I run a small business, we're being massively squeezed in the small business sector. To see all of this, living day to day like we all do, and then to see yet another scandal from the Labour Party, and we can go all the way back pretty much to their first week in office when we had the not the expenses scandal, we had the freebies scandal. It's just endless.
I mean, I do, in some way I feel, I'm waiting for the inbox to jump into life when I say this, but I do feel a bit sorry for her, because she said that she used, in her statement, she said, what did she say? Let me just bring you this statement. I'm trying to pull it up on screen now. She said that bear with me, she said, I wanted to make the Prime Minister aware of a matter which was brought to my attention regarding my family home. We let it out to tenants via an external lettings agency. Now, she would argue, and you might say, well, she's got a point, that really the agency should surely have told her if she needed to obtain this licence. She said, regrettably, we were not aware that a licence was necessary. It was an inadvertent mistake. Does that make it okay?
Not really. I mean, it depends how you look at it. I mean, again, I run a small business, and maybe you know about this as well, Bev, but if I try and use an excuse that I didn't declare some income for capital gains or something like that, they're not really going to care about me making that excuse as the normal person. If it's the same for me or people who run a business, or people who do pay their, or at least try to pay their taxes, it should be even more so the case for the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So no, I don't really have much sympathy for her not being over the detail on this, because the same exceptions wouldn't be made for normal people. As I understand it, the fine for this is around 30 grand. I hope she gets the whole 30 grand fine, which she will probably claim on expenses, or maybe take a severance payment if she gets sacked, like Angela Rayner did, which covered her missing tax. I think she had to pay.
Yeah. Well, the Prime Minister responded this evening, and he said the public rightly expects the highest standards of conduct from the politicians who serve them. The ministerial code sets out these values, and I have made it a core tenet of this government's mission to uphold them. I have this evening consulted with my independent advisor on ministerial standards, and he's advised me that further investigation is not necessary. The ministerial code makes clear that in certain circumstances, an apology is a sufficient resolution. I'm satisfied that this matter can be drawn to a close following your apology. Oh, I don't know. They seem very, very keen to start inquiries into things that would be sorted out in 2 seconds, and when it might sort of warrant a little bit of a deeper dive, he seems to go, yep, nothing to see here, move on, just say sorry, we're all okay with it.
I just try and imagine it, and it's really impossible not to do this if it was a Tory. Now, can you imagine the Labour front benches if this had been a Tory that had done this? You could say the same about, if it was a Tory that had failed to pay their stamp duty. They would be singing from the, crying from the rooftops about this all over social media. So again, it's very, very difficult to have sympathy for a party that, as I said, ran their entire election campaign on clearing up politics and being over the detail, a competent government, and the exact opposite is clearly true. And you could put this off again if there hadn't been so many scandals. If this was their first scandal, let's just say this was their first scandal. I don't think I would be raising too many eyebrows about it. I'm sure they would if the shoe was on the other foot. But this is, as I keep saying, this is a long line of scandals for the Labour Party, who is getting annihilated in the polls, and this certainly isn't going to help.
Yeah. Let's bring in Rebecca and Greg as well on this. Greg, you've seen there the statement that she made, and we've seen the Prime Minister's response. What do you make of it when you've seen both sides of that?
Yeah, I actually buy it. I think the letting agencies should have mentioned this, or at least ensured that she had the proper, either the proper permissions, or they should have attained the proper permissions. But I do think there's two things to conclude here. One is she and the entire government are incompetent, and two, there's too much regulation, there's too much red tape. This is a burden on the private sector. It's a burden on job producers. And now, so I don't dislike her for missing an administrative paperwork. I blame her for wrecking the economy with taxes and overregulation.
That's such a good point. I thought that myself actually this evening, Rebecca. When we're talking about whether this woman has not paid 900 quid, don't we neglect the fact that she's absolutely trashing the economy because she is a hardcore socialist?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a broader picture to point out here. The story, or they're kind of bearing the lead. It's not the fact that she, like Greg said, missed this administrative paperwork, which I'm actually kind of sympathetic to. As somebody who's trying every year to figure out how to file my taxes, and it's different every year. It's an uphill battle, and I don't really like thinking about it. But I'm totally sympathetic for that reason. Like, this isn't an easy system to navigate. But because of that, it kind of speaks to the incompetence of the government. Why is it so difficult to navigate? And then, in addition to that, why would she only get a slap in the wrist in that case? I mean, if I could just say, "I'm sorry," and then all my debts were forgiven, that would be a really interesting incentive structure, as we were talking about earlier. And so, yeah, I do think that there is a larger problem here when it comes to the actual incompetence.
Do you know what else troubles me a little bit, Lee? Is Dulwich is not far from Westminster, so she's moved into the Chancellor's residence on Downing Street. We know that, don't we? She's moved into number 11.
Yeah.
There seems to be an element of greed for me, that she's rented out the family home. She's got 2 children that are at school in Dulwich. Her husband also, I believe, is a civil servant as well. It seems sort of rash. I don't know. Who am I to judge somebody's living arrangements? But why would you move your husband and your kids out of school, presumably, into Downing Street to go to a different school? It's only down the road. Like, what does it tell us about her as a family as well? They've gone, oh, you know what? We've got 4 years. Let's rent out the house. They can afford to keep both houses. Why is she getting the money on? I mean, imagine the hassle of having to empty all your house and your kids. I just think it's a bit strange, all in all, Lee.
No, I agree with that, and it's part of me thinks, isn't it strange how becoming a Labour MP, or just an MP in general, maybe I shouldn't pick just on Labour, but does seem to increase your personal wealth quite considerably. Do I blame the MPs for being able to take advantage of a system that's clearly there to be taken advantage of? Part of me doesn't, but the other part of me thinks, and this is coming back to a little bit of what was just said a minute ago, I do think, yes, it's easy to sort of say we can have sympathy for her for making a mistake, but I strongly believe that if you are a minister of government, the second most important person in our country should be over the detail and held to a higher standard. So yes, you can say that you have empathy for it, and I suppose on a human level maybe I do. But then my heart kicks in, my head kicks in, sorry, and I think to myself, well, no other normal member of the public would be given a break on this, and we would be expected to be doing the right thing, and one of those things is getting a license to rent out your house when you should be doing it properly. And I don't necessarily also think that it's all on the letting agent to be responsible for that.
Yeah, Greg, you know Scott Bessent, her American equivalent, well. Is this the kind of thing he would do? Is it the kind of ball that he would drop? Would he just have people that would just deal with this for him?
I think he'd have plenty of people dealing with this kind of stuff. And this is why, the tax accountant industry is so profitable, because you hire this out, and you almost have to hire it out. And Rebecca, it's only going to get more complicated the more money you make and the older you get. So look, of course, the Treasury Secretary, he probably had such scrutiny when you're approved for a cabinet position or really any government position in the executive branch. You go through a lot of scrutiny. I guarantee you they looked under every detail.
Yeah, it makes us look incredibly amateurish, doesn't it? That the Chancellor of the Exchequer can't even rent out her house without realising there was a 900 quid that she was meant to pay for a licence. It casts sort of everybody in this political picture in a very poor light. It tells you so much about our government, about the wraparound support even that we give to our MPs. And in her defence, I would assume, Lee, that there are people that would help her with these sorts of things, but there's clearly not. What shambles we are as a country.
Absolutely, you would genuinely think that's the first thing I thought about. Was surely there's someone that works for her that would be all over this. But yeah, the focus for me is the sheer kind of incompetence of her as a Chancellor, and this is just yet another thing that, on its own, yes, probably doesn't look like, as I said, the crime of the century, but it just adds to this constant flow of information that we find out about this Labour Party that really doesn't fill the country full of confidence at all, or the markets, for that matter.
Yeah, quite. Equally as important. Lee, thank you so much. Lee Harris there, dropping in to join us here in Washington, D.C. It's a very strange story, this. I think that so many people get cast in a poor light, not just Rachel Reeves. Let me know your thoughts this evening, gbnews.com/your say. I'd love to hear from you on this topic. But still to come tonight on The Late Show Live. Extraordinary pictures there of the fiercest storm to hit Jamaica in 200 years. Homes have been flattened, power knocked out, lives torn apart. Also, tonight, here's a story you definitely won't want to miss. Hardest working man in politics, President Trump has been treated like a king in South Korea today. He was even gifted a golden crown. But will he receive the same reception in China tomorrow? Crunch talks coming. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. Breaking tonight, Hurricane Melissa is tearing through the Caribbean, leaving devastation in its wake. In Haiti, around 20 people have been confirmed dead after catastrophic flooding. 4 more lives were lost in Jamaica. Winds topped 185 miles an hour. Can you imagine that, making it the strongest Atlantic hurricane in modern history? Jamaica's Prime Minister has told of mass devastation in the country. Joining me now is Stephanie Christensen, Executive Director of ShelterBox Canada. Stephanie, thank you very much for joining me this evening. So what happens now? This is your area of expertise in these terrible aftermath of these storms. What will people be needing, Stephanie?
Thank you for having me. So ShelterBox is an emergency disaster relief charity. We focus primarily on emergency shelter and the supplies that people need to recover after disasters all around the world. And we have a lot of experience working after hurricanes in the Caribbean. So right now, number one is search and rescue. And then we're looking at shelter, water, food, those essentials that people are going to need to rebuild their lives.
When you say water, why is that a problem in this situation, Stephanie?
That's a great question. So these storms bring storm surges in, so huge amounts of floodwaters, and basically that contaminates most clean drinking water sources. We know that there are certain areas of Jamaica that towns are completely underwater. Things have been washed away, so there's a lot of debris, bacteria. We see, mosquitoes and stuff, so vector-borne disease is important too, but clean water and shelter are really high priorities.
And how do charities like yours and organisations like ShelterBox, how do you judge when is the right time to go in without putting your own people at risk?
Yeah, so we have a team ready to deploy. We'll be sending them to Jamaica imminently, but we really prepare for these storms ahead of time. So we have aid already in Panama and Barbados ready to go. And as soon as the storm is passed, we can go. We can make our teams pretty self-sufficient, so we're not taking resources away from people on the ground, but we want to get there to do those assessments as quickly as possible so that we understand exactly what people need, whether our aid is appropriate, and make sure that we can get people what they need to recover as soon as possible.
Would you like to see the foreign governments around the world do more to step in and help countries like Jamaica and Haiti at a time like this?
I think there is so much need around the world right now, not just Haiti and Jamaica. I think there is a lot of coordination efforts going on right now in the aftermath of this storm, which is great. They're going to need a lot of assistance. But Jamaica is also quite well prepared for this storm. I think in general, it's great when foreign governments, where requested, can provide emergency aid, because there are millions of people displaced around the world right now.
And in terms of your experience of cities and countries which have suffered these sorts of natural disasters, how do you think this compares to what you've seen before this situation in Jamaica and Haiti?
Yeah, so anytime we see these Category 5 storms or equivalent, really with those wind speeds, it's hard for any building to withstand that. I was deployed to Fiji after the equivalent of a Category 5 cyclone, and it's really devastating what wind and storm surges can do in these conditions. We are certainly seeing climate change make storms stronger, make storms larger. Certainly the size of this storm and how slow moving it was broke a lot of records, but also made it incredibly dangerous and damaging for the islands that it hit.
And how do people start rebuilding their lives, Stephanie? And do most people who go through this sort of thing ever get back the quality of life they had before?
I think it really depends where people are located and what support is locally available. But at ShelterBox, we try really hard to give people what they need to recover. So that's emergency shelter right now. We'll look at providing things like tarps, tools, and building materials to allow people to repair a damaged shelter or build a locally appropriate shelter from scratch. And as more materials become available, they can switch out the tarps for more permanent building materials. And so we're always looking at how we can help people recover as fast as possible. But things like these storms take a lot of time. It will take a long time to just clear the debris and rebuild. I think, Jamaica is in a good place. They were well prepared for this, but this level of devastation you really can't prevent, and so it will take a very long time for these islands to recover. But we're hopeful that we can get aid in very quickly and help people respond with what they need if it's the right thing to do.
One of the things I'm thinking, Stephanie, as I'm watching these pictures is it's not only that they need support in food, water, shelter, they also need to remove such a large amount of debris as well. Like, what kind of process goes into clearing these areas when houses are just been reduced to piles of wood and metal rooftops?
Yeah, so there's a lot of work that local disaster management, local governments need to do to clear that, often whether it's bulldozers or going around with dump trucks and kind of collecting things. Each country does it a little bit differently. When we're providing our emergency shelter, try to keep people as close as possible to their home site, which keeps them with their community, allows people to recover faster. But as I said, there's entire communities that are still underwater right now. And so we also need to be able to coordinate where we can put emergency shelters, whether tents end up being the best option or we're building these shelter kit structures. We need to work with local agencies to figure out how we clear room to give people room to rebuild. But it's a long process. I think in the coming days, we'll see more about how Jamaica is going to handle that. But right now, the priority is really search and rescue, finding people that are injured. Hopefully there's not significantly more loss of life, but there will probably be more reports in the coming days.
Let's bring in, thank you, Stephanie, stay with me. Let's bring in Rebecca and Greg here in the studio with me. Greg, what's going through your mind when you look at those pictures? I mean, we just saw, if people are listening on the radio, we just saw people just sat on plastic chairs. They're just covered in mud. It's the mud must be one of the hardest things to deal with, because complete roads have turned into mud bath where there was formerly, I suppose, a pavement.
Yeah, it's devastating to watch, but and I think a lot of people in the Caribbean are I wouldn't say they're used to that kind of devastation. That would be exaggerating. But if it's someone that's older, if they're over 20, they've probably been through some really devastating storms already. I mean, Katrina was 20 years ago. That was probably the most devastating. But Sandy, which hit more of the northern part of the Atlantic, and especially in New York, was only 10 years ago. I mean, these things happen. So it sounds great that Stephanie's organization and other organizations like Halo Trust, which is was on the ground helping the people in Turkey during that earthquake a month or two ago. You've got the U.S. military during the Haiti earthquake. They were on the ground quickly. So, Stephanie, is there any insights so far on foreign either militaries or charities besides yours making a move toward Jamaica and toward the other islands?
Yeah, there's a pretty robust coordination of international humanitarian organizations. So prior to this storm hitting, we were already in contact with the International Organization Migration, organizations like the Red Cross, and we all coordinate together to make sure that we're not all working in the same area, that we're sharing those needs assessments, getting the right aid to people. So there certainly are a lot of agencies ready to respond, and ShelterBox, as I mentioned, focuses primarily on that emergency shelter. That's where our expertise is, but there will be a lot of aid coming in. I think the one thing that we always caution when we see storms like this, where people are always really interested in helping, is that it is not overly helpful for people to send goods themselves. It blocks up customs and everything, but it happens every time. I think there's a lot of professional humanitarian organizations on the ground ready to respond, and people that want to support these communities. Picking an organization you trust is the best way to do that.
Rebecca, do you want to ask Stephanie a question while we have her expertise here?
Yeah, Stephanie, I want to thank you for all the work that your organization has done, but I'm particularly curious. We've seen the devastation in this footage, and although there have been many natural disasters in the region in the past, there have been reports about just the magnitude and the severity, and that it's record-breaking in many ways. Like, can you give us an estimate, really? What's the extent of the damage, and how long will it actually take to really recover from something like this?
That's a great question. It's still really early to know the full extent of the damage. Most of the island of Jamaica has lost power. Entire areas are completely cut off by landslides, by flooding. So it will take a few days to be able to reach every part of the island and understand just how bad the devastation is. We're seeing these videos and photos of devastation in the larger areas, and you can see how bad it is. It takes a very long time for islands to respond and recover after this. It will be years, for sure.
Stephanie, can I just ask you one last question before we go? I'm interested in what it's like for you when you arrive in these scenes of devastation, and what it's like for the people working on the ground. I imagine hugely upsetting, but it must be immensely rewarding when you can help people get back on their feet.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to see so many people losing their homes, losing their livelihoods, losing everything really. But the ability to give these people the aid they need to recover is really heartening. It's why I do what I do. But I think the thing for me too, being on the ground in these situations, is you really see the good of humanity. You see how these communities come together. They are the first responders on the ground. They're already, starting to help each other before the agencies are already there. And that is really heartening to see.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well done. Keep up the amazing work that you do. Stephanie Christensen there, Executive Director of ShelterBox Canada.
Thank you so much.
Right, thank you. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
Was just walking towards me, and I thought, this is not right. So I moved out of the way, and then he brushed past me, he turned around and he kicked me like he was kicking a football.
Oh, the lovely, wonderful Kirsty Gallagher. She's a fantastic person. She's opened up about her harrowing experience on the streets of central London. Are assaults in the capital of the UK becoming pretty commonplace? Also tonight, figures are showing that over the past decade, there has been a staggering 74% increase in stolen vehicles reported to police in England and Wales. But just what is happening to Britain's stolen cars? I'll tell you in just a moment. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start for many of us today. A few mist patches around a chilly start, but plenty of sunshine. It is then going to turn increasingly cloudy from the west, with outbreaks of rain and strengthening winds later. Already turning cloudy for parts of Wales, the southwest and Northern Ireland. And then we've got this rain moving in late morning for Northern Ireland, pushing then into western Scotland, parts of Wales as well as the winds strengthen. But it stays bright in the east, and as it turns cloudy, it will stay rather chilly, 10 to 12 Celsius, but temperatures up to 15 in the south. And we do have the wind strength, and that's going to make it feel on the cool side, with the strongest winds expected across western Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, 60 to 70 mile-per-hour wind gusts in exposed spots. That combined with some wet weather as we go into the evening for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, as well as increasingly parts of Wales and the southwest, it's going to make for some tricky conditions if you're out and about. Further east, though, we keep the clear spells, albeit with increasingly thick layers of cloud moving in. And then this active band of rain moves west to east, predominantly during the evening across western parts, slowing down and becoming a little more fragmented as it clears eastern areas during the early hours, pushing into Orkney and Shetland by dawn on Friday. Replaced by clear spells, blustery winds, so that will keep the temperatures at 8 to 13 Celsius typically, but also some frequent showers moving in. Initially, the showers will be across western and southern parts of the UK, but showers could develop just about anywhere on Friday, and there'll be some really quite lively downpours, thunder and lightning, hail, and very gusty winds around some of the livelier showers, particularly for central and southern parts of the UK. In between, some sunny spells, but it's going to remain blustery through the day. A little bit warmer, however, 17 Celsius in the south.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Bev. I have Greg and Rebecca with me still in the studio, and I'd love to hear from you this evening. gbnews.com/you'll Jackie said, could you ask the lady what support there is for pets and animals? I wish I'd thought of that, Jackie. Thank you, because we were just saying in the studio, this is in the event of hurricanes and storms, etc. It must be awful in terms of your cats and your dogs and where they've ended up. Greg, you've never been in a storm. Why am I looking at you as though you might have an opinion on what you do with a kind of storm? But let's bring in GB News contributor and comedian Steve N. Allen. Steve, I imagine you've never been in a hurricane either and know what to do with a cat or a dog. But I don't know whether you saw that. The devastation there, the lives, though, we are so blessed in the UK, aren't we, that we have such mild weather that we never have to endure. Well, I say that, but of course people watch this going, well, hang on a minute, we have some massive floods that have ruined houses, but on the whole we are incredibly lucky. We take it for granted.
Yes, and we have floods, but they mainly impact houses that have been built on floodplains, which might not be the cleverest idea. And yeah, we've had the odd storm, but I think that's one of the things that helped this nation achieve what it's done through the centuries. It's got weather that doesn't really trouble us. We don't have any problem with earthquakes, and most of the animals you could beat in a fist fight. So I think all of that helps us.
There's advice for tonight. Right, let's have a quick look at the front pages of the papers, shall we, Steve? What about this one on the front page of The Independent? So this is David Lammy, and the headline is, I was on The Independent, I was spat on for being black, but the UK is not racist. Deputy Prime Minister launches deeply personal attack on Nigel Farage's reform for pitting neighbour against neighbour, feeding fear and fuelling outrage. Why is the paper leading on this, do you think? That's one of the questions which occurs to me. I'm not sure I really care what David Lammy thinks.
Well, he's written it as a special piece because of Black History Month, and he's writing exclusively in The Independent.
There we go. I knew there must be a reason.
Yeah. The Independent is also not really a newspaper, so because they don't print it off anymore. So all of that added together adds to this. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, kind of, you feel like you can't actually say Britain is racist because he's kind of in charge now. He's the Secretary of State for Justice, so it would almost be his fault if it were. So it's good that actually the rhetoric is somewhat contained, because in the past it wouldn't have been that surprising if he said this nation was a racist nation. You can definitely admit there are racist people. There is still a problem with that, but the nation itself is not fundamentally racist, and it's good we can all get on board with that. And of course he's going to be saying anti-reform things. That's just politics, I suppose. The Labour are seeing reform as the thing to try and fend off. They're doing really well in the polls, so of course there are going to be loads of attacks. So none of this really needs to be taken too seriously.
The problem is, though, when they keep saying that reform are racist and Nigel is a racist, whether you are a Labour MP, as he is, whether you're a Tory, whether you're a Green, whatever it is, every time you say that, it's just not landing anymore. The British public are too awake to what an actual racist looks like. It's when we use this language of the far right or they're Nazis. It's not working, is it? It's all it is doing is pushing people to try and actually defend Nigel. If that's what David Lammy's looking to do, is increase support for reform, he's doing a really good job, Steve.
Yeah, they're really missing how to play this, aren't they? It was a few weeks ago, there was the story when people were coming up with their ideas of what they should do about indefinite leave to remain. And for some reason, Keir Starmer decided to call the reform plan racist and immoral. Now, if you'd just said immoral, you can debate it all you want. But racist, well, you've got to define your terms, haven't you? You've got to actually work out if it is. And then it was about 3 seconds later, the Labour Party came out with their policy that was almost the same policy, other than retrospectively looking at indefinite leave to remain. Is that the thing that makes it racist versus non-racist? It's a word to throw, isn't it? That's what it is. It's like, oh, here's something I disagree with, but let's just throw the insult.
Yeah, Rebecca Zelko is still with me from Blaze News, and Greg Swenson. And Rebecca, let me ask you about this. This word racist, it gets thrown about by politicians. Is it just as bad here as it is in the UK, that nobody ever really defines that particular term?
It certainly used to be more so. It was the pejorative of choice for a lot of politicians or just, political activists that really had an obsession with the race issue and race relations in the United States. But as you pointed out, I think correctly, the American public, and now increasingly so, the citizens in the UK, are becoming fatigued with this conversation. It just doesn't stick the way that it used to, especially if you start categorizing half of the country or a majority of the country as that word, as racist. It sort of loses its meaning altogether, and people start to look at these headlines and sort of roll their eyes at the whole thing. They're not taking it as seriously as they used to, because it's become one of those terms that means nothing effectively.
Yeah, and what it means, the trouble is, Greg, as well, is that when you do use it willy-nilly, as we might say in the UK, it is very hard to actually point the finger when somebody is being genuinely discriminatory to somebody about the amount of melanin they have on their skin, and you can't then no longer hold that person accountable.
Right, and I think, it's the boy who cried wolf, because you're right, and it's disrespectful for people who actually have suffered from racism, and perhaps that was even if it was generations ago. And so I think, this is a moment where the left is going to continue calling the parties of the right, the Republican Party, Reform in the UK, calling them racist either when they disagree or when the other side is actually winning. And the best way to perform with minorities, again, the left is completely dependent on racial and identity politics. The best way to win that fight is have policies and outcomes that are better for racial minorities, which is what the president did in his first term, and he's doing it again now. That's why he did so well with the minority vote in the last election.
Yeah. Shall we look at the front page of the Daily Mirror, Steve, if we can? Now, this is the Andrew scandal not going away. This is MPs piling pressure on the King over Andrew. What's happening here?
Well, it's about getting value for money. And the question is, are we getting value for money? I don't think we are, when basically he's paying a peppercorn tax, which actually we could have looked at this issue anyway, couldn't we? We could have worked out that he's been doing all right. Yes, he invested the money in getting the place refurbed first, and then you get this peppercorn tax. But now it's the big questions. Now that you are linked to Jeffrey Epstein, now that the questions need to be asked, I know in some senses his biggest crime was lying to Emily Maitlis, which I think is not against the law. But that's the interview that seems to have really tipped it. Now that we know that he wasn't honest in that interview, things have changed. The mood's changed around this, and it's the biggest punishment he's gone through is having to change his headed notepaper. He still has the titles that he's just choosing not to use. So it's not really like there's a massive downside to it for what he's gone through.
Yeah. What do my panel think about the Prince Andrew situation? The more I think about it, the more I can't believe he managed to hang on for so long. But this is it now. This is all massively caught up with him, Greg, and of course with his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. They've lived in these beautiful properties for years, as Steve says, paying hardly any rent. What do they do now? Where do they go now? Does anybody care? Greg?
I'm not sure how they can find a home and have those kind of terms that they had from the government. And so this is a difficult moment. And I think that what I didn't understand today in the green room is that it's basically the UK taxpayer that are funding their sweetheart deals. And that's not going to last. That won't continue.
Yeah, no, it is a mess for him, isn't it? We've got some breaking news that we need to bring you, which has just come into the GB newsroom. American President Donald Trump has announced that he's instructed the Department of War to begin testing US nuclear weapons immediately in response to nuclear testing by rival countries. So this is an announcement that came moments before he's expected to meet with China's Xi Jinping. Trump said in a post on social media that the US has more nuclear weapons than any other country, naming Russia as second and China a distant third, but will be even within 5 years. He went on to say, because of other countries' testing programs, I've instructed the Department of War to start testing on nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process will begin immediately, Trump says, and this marks a major shift in US policy as America has observed a voluntary moratorium on nuclear explosive testing since 1992. Trump, of course, is currently en route to Busan, South Korea, for his meeting with President Xi. None of us saw that coming tonight, Greg. What do you make of that? What's happened here? Knowing what we know about President Trump, knowing he has to sit down with the president of China tomorrow, is this part of a negotiation technique?
I think there's some of that, that's for sure. But listen, the president, if he's punched, he punches back. And the Russians and the Chinese, and the North Koreans for that matter, have been breaking all of the rules. They've been violating these treaties for generations now. In fact, President Trump in his first term dropped out of a medium-term nuclear arms deal that he had with that we had with the Soviet Union originally. And so this just proves again that he's willing to fight back. I think going back to Reagan and his comments about the Soviet Union, Reagan hated nuclear weapons. I'm quite sure President Trump hates them too. But if the other side is going to violate the rules, that's something that we just can't ignore. And so, again, if he's punched, he'll punch back.
I wonder, Rebecca, as well, what I'm considering here is all of this anti-war, not just rhetoric. I know you said rhetoric. It isn't rhetoric. He's literally achieved peace in 6 or 7 conflicts around the world, President Trump. And perhaps there is an anxiety that his worst and most unpredictable adversaries, be that Putin, be that China, are starting to see him as a bit of a soft touch, that he no longer wants to hover his finger over the button, and maybe the response to that is to say, I will still fight fire with fire if necessary. Rebecca?
Yeah, the timing of this announcement, I think, is really intentional, especially ahead of his meeting with President Xi. But to your point, I mean, throughout his campaign and throughout his political career, he really marketed himself as the president of peace. That's a phrase that you would hear a lot coming from the administration and from the campaign. Now, another phrase you would hear very frequently is peace through strength. And so that's what the administration would point to in this scenario. But to your point about the anxiety, reading that statement, I could feel a lot of the, some of the more anti-war, the more isolationist types in the Republican Party, and there's many of them, increasingly vocal. I can feel them tense up. And so it's going to be, we're going to have to see if he can actually execute the art of the deal in a scenario like this that's really fragile, similar to what we saw in Iran in the spring, or in the summer rather. So it's going to be a waiting game, a tense one at that.
Steve, maybe this just taps into my naivety about nuclear weaponry, but I presumed America was doing testing on a regular basis anyway with their nuclear capabilities. Does it come as a surprise to you that they don't?
Well, it makes sense that they do, really, I suppose, doesn't it? Because it's a category difference. It's not like normal warfare, is it? It's not like who's got the best strategy, tactics on the ground. Nuclear war is all about the threat, because we don't actually get nuclear war, because we still have a planet. That's the difference, isn't it? It's either all or nothing. And it's because it's about threat, it makes sense to show that you have the latest technology with, again, you'll never use it. In the same way that you never plan to use the slightly out of date due to the moratorium technology, you'd never use the most up to date. But the threat is the thing that gives you the power. So it makes sense to still do the testing so that it doesn't seem like every other country has the latest nukes and you've got some 1980s stuff.
I also wonder what that involves. Do you know, Greg, if you're testing a nuclear weapon, where does one do that?
Well, it's typically done underground, and we have plenty of land in this country.
Middle of oceans as well?
Typically, yeah, of course, and done, but way below the surface, and then you'll see, some explosion come above the surface. But there are very safe ways to do it in Arizona, in Utah, in the desert, and that's been going on for for years now. But I do think that the president, again, it's almost the fool around and find out. He's going into Beijing with a bit of beer muscles here.
Yeah, I think so. Interesting. That will develop here tomorrow. I'm sure that story will keep evolving over the next 24 hours or so, particularly, as we say, when Donald Trump sits down with President Xi. Let's move on to something rather different. Oxford. In England, for our American viewers, I'm sure you're well aware of that. They've got a controversial new £5 congestion charge launched on 6 roads across the city. It's a temporary measure. The charge has prompted outrage from locals. Oxford is the first city outside of London to implement a congestion charge. Well, surprise, surprise, Steve, because as we know, these charges are going to be rolled out all around the country, and I hate every penny of them.
Well, in its defence, it's temporary, like income tax. So you don't have to worry about that, I suppose, going forwards. No, you're right, it is. It's because drivers are the cash cows to be milked. We've had the congestion charge in London, and it's clearly not about congestion, is it? It is about making money. If it was just about congestion, then make it so much higher and no cars would come in, and that'd be fine. The same's true of the ULEZ thing. It's not about getting clean air, it's about getting money. And you do feel sorry. There's the threat of the charging per mile as well that we hear about. If that happens, I don't intend to go the long way round roundabouts anymore. I am going to have to try and make all the savings that I can. So it does feel, it's just another example of the drivers being milked.
It's horrendous. But Greg, you don't, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have the same congestion charging here to save the planet, do you? And to minimise car use, or is it different in different states? What I have noticed you have here, which I find really weird, is that you can pay to go in a fast lane and all the poor people sit in a traffic jam right next to you. I find that a bit troubling, I can't lie.
Yeah, it's a tax that is probably the most regressive tax possible. Whether it's a congestion charge, which affects drivers that don't have the kind of money that the people that can afford to pay it will, and a small business, people that are making deliveries in central London are really being penalized for having the gall to drive a truck, and so especially if it's a truck that's not an electric vehicle or a hybrid. So look, this is, and wait till digital ID comes, and then you'll be controlled by the digital ID police. Oh, you already drove your 50 miles this week. You can't have any more time in your car. And this is just the start in the UK.
Exactly. It's not like that here, Rebecca. I do feel like in the US, the motorist is still king. Like you couldn't get around many cities in this country without driving your car.
That's definitely true. I mean, the fast lane thing is definitely, that's a real thing, especially in California. I used to drive on the highway pretty much every weekend to get home from school. And when I was in that traffic, I mean, I was seriously considering budgeting the fast lane because it honestly kind of seemed worth it in the moment. But the broader point, I think, that was made earlier is that this isn't really an actual solution to address congestion. It's kind of just a way for the state to kind of find more money to spend on God knows what. And I mean, in New York, it's egregiously expensive to drive into the city if you're an out-of-towner, and on the East Coast is not that far away. All the states are really tiny. And so it's just driving up costs. It's making the whole thing an even bigger headache. It's actually not really smoothing out the process for anybody. It's just fattening the pockets of
How much would you have to pay to go into New York in your personal car, Greg?
I think it's $20 or $30. I haven't actually seen the congestion charge in New York in effect yet. It's pretty controversial. There's been a lot of pushback from it, but it's a heavily Democratic town. It's 5 to 1.
Oh, Mamdani will be absolutely ranking that up. I mean, it will be $100 a day. He will absolutely love it, won't he? He's going to be your Sadiq Khan. Let's just go very quickly to talk about this dual heist which happened at the Louvre in Paris in broad daylight. Of course, you will have seen it. It was last week, and 2 men have been arrested now in connection with the theft. They've partially recognised their involvement in the brazen heist, according to officials. And the story gathered so much attention that a whole new trend has spun off it. This is the Louvre robber Halloween costume. It's taken TikTok by storm. Now, Here we go. We're watching people now. This is your sign. It says to dress up as the Louvre thieves for Halloween. They've got black onesies on, black cat suits. They've got balaclavas, and they're wearing diamond tiaras. You've got to say, Greg, this story has captured the imagination, particularly of the younger generation, because it was so brazen. They went in with a crane.
Yeah, I mean, daylight and what were they acting like they were, workers? So they had the high visibility vests on. I thought it was brilliant, but it's no fun to be a bank or a jewel thief or a bank robber anymore, because you're going to get caught. There's no, you can't beat the system. There's cameras everywhere. I mentioned, digital ID, but there are cameras everywhere. It's facial recognition, fingerprints, DNA. It's almost impossible to be a jewel thief now.
Yeah, okay. We're going to move on. I just want to recap that breaking news for you before we go. If you are just tuning in, President Donald Trump has just announced that he's instructed the Department of War under Pete Hegseth to begin testing US nuclear weapons immediately. And of course, this announcement has come moments before he's expected to meet China's President Xi. So we will have to wait and see what the implications of that are going to be. Rebecca, just last thoughts on that. Will we hear any more from Donald Trump? I can't help but think that this is just something he's taking into that meeting. We know he doesn't want war. We know he wants to be the president of peace. But I think he's just showing a bit of bicep before he sits down with President Xi.
Oh, certainly. This is going to be one of the tougher meetings, and I think that he's just anticipating that in advance with this Truth Social.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Steve and Alan. Rebecca Zelko. Greg Swenson, thank you very much for joining me tonight, and thank you as well for joining me. And I will see you tomorrow night here in the UK. Well, we've got this weird thing, haven't we, where the clocks have changed in the UK, but they haven't changed here yet in America. That will happen next weekend, or this weekend coming up. But until then, I will be on at 8 p.m. here, Eastern Time, and midnight over in the UK. Good night. Sleep well.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start for many of us today. A few mist patches around a chilly start, but plenty of sunshine. It is then going to turn increasingly cloudy from the west, with outbreaks of rain and strengthening winds later. Already turning cloudy for parts of Wales, the southwest and Northern Ireland. And then we've got this rain moving in late morning for Northern Ireland, pushing then into western Scotland, parts of Wales as well, as the winds strengthen. But it stays bright in the east, and as it turns cloudy, it will stay rather chilly.